That's starting. I gotta run downstairs.
Hey, you disabled participant sharing.
Uh-oh. Maybe you need to text and call him and let him know that.
Well, can you guys see my screen anymore?
I still see your screen.
You do? Let me see if I can, hold on, I've lost my mouse. Where'd it go? Get over here.
The cat has it.
I'm still here. Are you okay?
Well, no, I got a notice saying that the host had, can you guys see that, had disabled the sharing, but I'm wondering if is it still up?
It's still up, so you should be okay.
Okay, I just received a notice popped up saying that, you had somehow disabled it, but apparently.
You're good. Okay, sorry, I gotta run downstairs. Bye.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the data meeting. It looks like we are just we're gonna take over from Aaron. He got pulled out. And as usual, I mean, most of you are here all the time. Just mute your microphone because it does cause like a lot of feedback when you know, with others when somebody's trying to talk. And it looks like we have the agenda, and it looks like Cliff. Well, hi, Cliff. Cliff's going to be our first presenter today. So Cliff, I'll go ahead and let you take over. I may, you know, change, I guess, of the view, what you see. So ignore me, you know, I won't close out your PowerPoint, but I might just try to go to full, but I'm still finding my mouse and getting a little situated here. Okay.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, looks like you've already got the arrow keys available to just move from side to side. Are you able to bring this to a full screen for us?
Well, I'm working on that. For some reason, my, like I said, my mouse disappeared. What's the shortcut key to do that since I can't find my mouse? Anybody know that?
Jump over to PowerPoint and try to find out.
I know it on Macs. I don't know it on PCs. Sorry.
I know. I'm trying to, I don't know where my mouse went. There should be a. Whoops.
Yeah, I see the button, but it's not telling me what the
Layout.
change is.
Maybe Shift F5.
Look at you guys.
Does that work?
Or if you just go to slideshow and just do from beginning, I think that would, as long as we stay on the same monitor.
There you go. Is that better?
A little bit. Still a little bit small, only getting a, you know, about a half
There we
screen
go.
size.
Slideshow. No, I don't like that view. You guys? It's window, new window.
F5 is the slideshow, but I think you were in presenter mode.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you can reverse it once you've started it to switch monitors.
Yeah.
Let me get it off my thing. See, yeah, it doesn't want to, I go F5. Not taking it to the full slide mode. Is that better? Because it's on my full screen. Can you guys see that?
We see the partial screen. We see the presenter view with the seconds going and the pause and
Oh, you do? See? And that's
And
not what I
You see where it says display settings at the top? If you click on that, it'll allow you to switch.
Where are you going? I don't see slideshow. Where are we going?
get it back to the presenter that we were showing. And then there was an option to adjust it there.
Transition. Hold on, I don't know where I'm going. This would have been nice to, home. Where am I going, David? Slideshow. There we go. Display settings.
Swap. Bingo, here we go.
There we go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and us getting started. I'm going to start us out with discussing UTREx submissions. And if you can go ahead and advance us to the next slide. I'm going to try to hit this kind of in a time frame sense for you for the titles of each of these. So I'm starting out with the end of the prior school year. We're finalizing UTREx data. I'm going to overview that and kind of give some timelines and help everybody get a better understanding of what a lot of the USBE processes are that UTREx is heavily involved with in submissions, which can be qualified both as the daily submission and then also for our point in time submissions for our October, December, and then end of year submission. So let me get started. During our finalizer window, which is typically 1 to 2 weeks, the data corrections all need to be made. So UTREx, it needs to have all of the changes that you would like to have done for the full year, made for it by the end of that finalizer window. If there's any historic updates that need to be made, there's also a cutoff date for that, to where the historic updates will no longer be able to be requested and fulfilled. And any errors that you have, which are fatal errors, the level 1 errors, those all have to be resolved before you can complete your finalizing. The warnings, the level 2 errors, are not required to be resolved, but are still suggested to be more accurate. And in some cases, those level 2 warnings are actually, a precursor to that it will be required field in the future. But when we're implementing some of our new fields, it doesn't take all the way to an error the first time through. So we'll allow a grace period for those warnings, but we'll notify and let everyone know if something is changing from a warning to a required. The finalizing takes a snapshot of the relevant data for each school. So that again is there for reporting purposes, to where you can have everything ready to go in one single shot for each of those timeframes to build all of your reporting off of. And UTREx isn't really utilized for most of the reporting. A lot of times it's the output from UTREx through these finalization and snapshots. Refinalizing is available up until the end of the finalizer window. So if you do jump in and you finalize it first day and you find that there's something that you had missed, you do have until the end of the window to be able to continue to refinalize. Any extensions that are needed can be requested by a school on a day-to-day basis. The extensions have to be requested and granted by the superintendent, requested of and granted by the superintendent. So those aren't easy to get, but we generally don't deny them. So, instances we've had, they're all legitimate, and, we're willing to take everything into account. We just need to make sure that we go through the right process and don't have any extra work that wasn't actually needed. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, one more for our finalizing of the UTREx data. This is a little bit of just kind of take note items as you're going through it. The schools need to make sure that the finalized data has finalized correctly. After collecting data, make sure that the data collected has finished processing before finalizing the data. Check the dates and time on the collection and make sure that they're all in sync and finished before finalizing the data. after collections are started, it can take over an hour or more, depending on the size of your school or district, to finish the processing. And another kind of gotcha here is to not assume that the data has finalized, and to check and make sure that it shows as finalized. And lastly, that LEAs are the responsible party for finalizing their data. And we do try to keep a strong communication with all LEAs during this time, and provide any assistance and answer questions that are needed. Go to the next slide. Here's our finalizer end dates. So our start dates, I mentioned a little bit of October. It's an October 1st to typically the 7th. We do have a little bit of a window available extra that we try to buffer for if there are any extensions. So when I referenced a potential 2 weeks, that's, you know, including in any potential extensions which would be needed. And then there's the December 7th. So that would be a December 1st date, finalizing out to the 7th as the last day of the window, and then July 7th. And as mentioned here, the historic update requests have to be by the 23rd of the following month or preceding month. Go ahead to the next slide. In between school years. So this is another time frame scenario so that you know you've completed your finalizing and what's next. What's next is this in between school years time frame where internal USBE steps are taken after that finalizer window is closed. UTREx, the data warehouse, and SSID are typically unavailable for about 4 to 10 days, depending on work required. So that should be something that is planned ahead for, and to be expected if you're not able to connect or add students that are coming into the state for the first time. You may have some connection problems trying to get out to our SSID to be able to do that. Their systems are very interconnected. So that's the reason why I'm kind of referencing more than one application here, because they're very much dependent on each other to do the work that they're doing. Then we have our data collections. They stop and do not start again until the next school year is in place. And USBE will provide that date each year once it's determined. And again, that is work which we do after the finalizer and then after our next step here for the ETL, that we move into that lower step there of the rollover, which I'll get to now. But collections that are sent before that will fail. So again, expecting to be able to get a collection through before we've given that all clear notice, you can expect for it to come back with a very short error, basically saying that the plan year isn't there and you're not going to get any details back about your submission other than that. The export transfer load, or ETL, that's the name that we use for this process where the finalized data is audited. Any USBE corrections are made. Audit is accepted and passes. And the finalized data is then moved from UTREx to our data warehouse. And again, that's what we call our ETL process. Then we have the UTREx rollover, which is what we get to after we've passed that ETL. The UTREx has to set up the new manifest and school year. The year-end reporting for the last school year is now completed, and the reports that reference ETL data is on the data warehouse. Go ahead to the next slide. I'm just going to take a moment to pause. If there's any concerns or questions as we go through, please do a raise of your hand or jump in with the chat to let us know, and we can try to watch for that and pause at the time that you have any questions or concerns. All right, So getting started into the next school year, the next time frame that we're walking into, the reestablishing data connections. So each school determines their own start date for their school year. It is not determined by USBE. Each school and or their SIS must have their data set up for the next school year before starting the collections. The UTREx clearinghouse specification gives precise details for what is required for accurate data. It updates throughout the year with new specifications that must be in place before the start of the next school year. And that can be required sooner if required by legislation, which again will make communication known if that does become the case. But typically your goal on that would be to make sure that it's in place for the next school year. New validations, oh, sorry, a little bit more on the last one. We've got new field validations indicate if there will be a level 1 fatal error or level 2 warnings. After a determined time, some of those will become required and give fatal errors. Kind of jump to that a little bit earlier. Each school will need to start a new daily collection schedule to be sent to UTREx. Go to the next slide. So starting that schedule is where we're going to go on this slide here. So at the beginning of the new school year, collections should be set up and started as soon as data and statistics or anyone from USBE in one of the relevant departments, so that could also be myself or UTREx, lets you know if it is safe to start collections. So that's that all clear I'd mentioned. And if you send the collections early, they will fail. Just to make that extra clear. The database also needs to be ready, and that's your SIS database needs to be ready for the fiscal year before beginning the new school year's collection. At the start of each year, there's a new manifest. The manifest is what holds the requested data that UTREx collects. So when we add a new field, we're really adding it to the manifest to ask for that new field to come through. And again, that is entirely represented through the UTREx specification. New schedule is required to be set up and aligned with that latest manifest version. So as you can see in this example, we've got an expiration date for these schedules. So when you go out this year, if you haven't already, to set up a new schedule, you might see that it expires in a number of days, which again will align closely with our new school year to be able to keep that old manifest from being something that is reused. All right, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, setting up your collections. You use the data gateway to go to the data collector. I'm giving an example here from once you've logged in, going to the UTREx and then over to other systems and data collector. It's possible that this screen might be a little bit different for you. If it is, please give me that feedback and I can adjust my slideshow for the next time around. This is what it looks like from my standpoint. From the data collector, we use the link add new scheduled collection, again with an arrow there showing it below, which is a clickable link near the bottom. If you've already got one established, you can click the one over to the side of manage scheduled collection. They're very similar. They take you pretty much the same page. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, setting up the collection schedule. The start time needs to be rounded to the hour. The scheduled action, you want to do a collect, validate, and submit if no errors. And just to clarify what that means, the collect is simply getting it. The validate is to be able to get your returned errors and knowing if it worked. And then the submit will allow it to actually go out to UTREx. So if you're in a testing purpose and you don't want to submit, you could set it up to just do the collect and validate. and you could get feedback without concern that it was going out to UTREx. All right, then we have do not select, and that's skip or pause collections. So that option there at the bottom of skip scheduled collection when a prior collection is in progress but not yet submitted. Don't click that, and don't click the one below there of pause. They'll do basically what they say, which doesn't really support, what we use this application for. Collections continue even after the finalizing of data for October 1st and December 1st. So, those are our mid-year collections, but there are going to be those milestones that we need to make sure we have accurate data for. Then after finalizing at year end, the managed collection setup is needed to be deleted. If it doesn't, I believe it just auto does it for us. So if you feel that everything's concluded and you want to go out and delete it because you've finished your collections, you can feel free to do so. Go to the next slide. All right, and as far as the recurring collection, this is off to the side of the submission there, the schedule. We have including weekends, so data is updated Monday mornings for testing. So we like to have that at daily and include weekdays and include weekends. So even if there aren't changes in place, it helps support the design of UTREx to ensure that we're getting the data each day. We can work with other scenarios, but this is our preference and works the smoothest with us. Go ahead to the next screen. And of course, if there's any problems, we are available to assist, to enter in a help desk at the helpdesk.schools.utah.gov. And, we will, help you figure out whatever it is that you've come up with as a challenge. Next screen. Okay, and a little bit of a parting recommendations to kind of go over what we've talked about. Some of the problems that we hear at USBE are where the student data is not submitting for test rostering, students are not rostering for testing, an LEA contacts another LEA about correcting data that affects their level 2 data, and still updates are not happening on the data collection. Or another LEA is not collecting data on a continuous basis, causing the LEA's level 2 school data to not be updated and accurate. Or another LEA is claiming a student that is no longer attending their LEA, or they are slow to correct the dates or data for that student. So some ways that we can work towards addressing that are, and these are ways that you can help us in addressing this, that schools should not be waiting until the middle or end of September to begin their collections. So getting that data as fast as possible. I like to go with the concept of fail fast. You want to know if there's something that needs to be corrected as soon as possible. So, going with that mentality of getting it out there and knowing what you need to work with ahead of time where you don't get into a crunch. And schools should be correcting data at least weekly, if not daily, and when collections are close to being due. So daily corrections should also be happening to help prevent the things which we had talked about earlier. And then once the collection due dates have passed, data still needs to be corrected and updated, and that can happen through your historic updates. So that data is still referenced in reports, and you still want to have it accurate. So it's not a clean wash of, well, I got past the old school year, no need to ever think about that again. It's definitely good to think about that from your reporting purposes, that even if you don't have to submit on it, you still want to have it accurate, and historic updates are the way to do that, which can be requested through the data gateway. Go ahead to the next screen. All right, so we've transitioned out of that section. Is there any questions or concerns anyone would like to bring up before I move into another area? I'm not seeing anything. If anyone else is seeing anything, please speak up and let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and progress. So go ahead to the next screen. All right, so we've got 3 new absence fields this year. That's got my name here on this one. So we've specified which ones I get to cover. I didn't see that in my last version. So USBE is still working through some of the problems with the submissions of those 3 new absence fields. Some LEAs are submitting the 3 absence fields and it's not being submitted correctly, or we should say it's not getting into our system correctly because of a misalignment. And for the time being, with this being new data, there is not a heavy impact as we've not started using it yet. So that gives us a little bit of a buffer and gives you a buffer as well too. So you don't need to get worried or stressed about those 3 new absence fields until we get back to you and let you know that they're completely ready. And that's when we'll start to reference that data as being accurate and continue to use it. So we did not populate the 3 new absence fields in UTREx for school year 2022 because of that data quality issue that we saw. Next screen. And here's a transition. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yep. So in this year, there is a clarification added in the most updated version of UTREx specifications. So basically, we set the counts of days absent due to suspension as an independent category in addition to excused and unexcused absence counts. Thus, in the new submission, we expect the sum of the 3 absence fields that I mentioned equals to the total number of student absence. You can check the specific explanations for them on the page 40 to 41 in the most updated UTREx specifications, which you can download from USBE website. So next slide, please. So David, please go ahead.
Hey, everybody. This is just a quick overview of the SRO fields in the student incident table or school incident table. There are 4 that are required fields and 1 that's an optional field. There were a few LEAs that had yeses in one of these 4 fields: the physical arrests, search and seizure, criminal flag, or non-criminals. And then the rest were 0. There were a few that were NA. At some point, this will become a required field and will become, not required, but will become fatal. Right now, I believe it's just a warning. So the question that we have is anyone having issues in submitting this data? Are there any issues with any particular SIS system that anybody's had? If there's anything, you just let us know. You can do it in the chat or contact someone on data and statistics. Okay, so looks like Stacy said that the Power School's not quite doing it correctly. It'll turn fatal if it's not submitted, whether it be a yes or a no. Okay. Okay, I think that's all I've got right at the moment. So next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. An update on the retaliation field. All the SIF mapping and information for the retaliation field is currently in the UTREx specs, but we're not quite ready on our end to receive those data yet. So I'm calling your attention to that in the specs. Please have a look and be prepared to submit these retaliation field data this year. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we're moving on with Stephanie and Colby.
Yes.
Okay.
So here is a section for new enrollment validation type field. Let's go next slides, please. So here is the overview for the enrollment validation type field that all LEAs submitted in the school year 2022. So generally speaking, there are 155 out of 156 LEAs submitted this data at year end. So from this, yeah.
I'm going to pause you for a moment. A couple questions came in from our last slide that I'd like to give Wynn an opportunity to answer, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Go back
Wynn,
to that.
do you see
Sure,
the
yeah,
question?
I'm here. I'm looking at them now. Slightly more specific about retaliation. Does it apply to the whole incident? Yeah, the idea of this is that it's an indicator of whether the incident was a retaliation or an alleged retaliation as defined by the code that's specified in that slide. So it's additional information that will help us understand more about school incidents. This year being, when is it needed? Yeah, I know that there's a ticket in for us to complete this on our end, but I don't, Cliff could maybe give a better update than me. Last I looked, it's not been scheduled, I don't think. So like I say, we're not prepared to receive these data, but I believe on your end, you'll need to be ready to submit them. October 1st, I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. Aaron or Cliff, can you jump in on that?
Maybe can re-specify the question for me, but I can say that as far as with when this is going to be done, it isn't onto our schedule for in August. We don't have this slated out throughout the whole year, locked into place, but we are hoping to have this in place before October, and we'll let everyone know if that's the case. But again, that's kind of the time frame that I would suggest that is at least considered for this, is that that's our hope, is to get it before October. And we'll continue to try to prioritize this to happen as soon as possible.
Thanks, Cliff.
And I can,
Go ahead, Aaron.
let's say, I'll answer the question from John. So the disciplinary data entry training is, I believe, threefold or three fronts. Front number one is what we're doing right now, is introduction, saying here's the technical components that need to happen. Another front is with the counselors, or the I want to say it's a school safety team that will be doing this communication and training. So we're actually in multiple meetings discussing the training approach. So again, letting you guys know the technical need, the training is coming to you, and we'll be refreshing this. And obviously as it comes online, we'll be letting you know about that. Two, we will be going to, if you will, the school safety teams or whoever they are. And I'm not as familiar with our counterparts that you'll be working with. When I say our counterparts, let me restate that. I'm not as familiar with your counterparts at the LEAs, who is going to get the training, but we are talking with the counselors. If there's a safety team or whatever, those individuals are from the state board are planning to do a direct training to them on what is needed in the data entry. The third front is also communication with the superintendency, with the LEA leadership, directors and such, where it's like, okay, here are the components and this is how you look at it. So it's three fronts, like I said. This is one tier. And hopefully that makes sense. And that's who we're trying to get everyone to. So
Thanks, Aaron.
thank you. Great questions, guys. And thank you for allowing me to pause. I thought it was an opportune moment before we forgot what was being asked. So Stephanie, thanks for letting me interrupt you.
Okay. Let me move back to this one, back to Stephanie.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. So let's continue. So here is an overview for the enrollment validation type field that all LEAs submitted in the school year 2022. So basically, there are 155 out of 156 LEAs submitted this data at year end. So here is a table which presents the distribution, percent distribution of the codes submitted for that field. So in the table, we can see most students were reported with an enrollment validation type A, or 100% attendance validated. So this is the most popular one for the students submit for the LEA submitted for their students. And there are some other code you can see in this table, which is L representing 100% learner validated, and M representing mixed, S representing 100% somewhere else. So here are some of the facts. And then there are total of 718,000 students with a valid value for any of the codes were submitted. So one note that I have to make is the data count we presented here are not distinct student count. So one student throughout the school year may be submitted for several of the enrollment validation type. So this is representing the count may have multiple student record duplicates. So that's for this. And then I think we can go to the next slide. So Kobe, please go ahead.
All right. So for this attendance, the S1.403 validation will be a fatal error starting early in November. So for the enrollment validation type, it must be present if students have more than 10 days total membership in a school. If the student is not attending an out-of-state school, grade level is not pre-kindergarten, and the date of submission is later than the last school day. Next slide. And now we're going to go on to the new early numeracy fields. I got beeping going on. Next slide. So the early numeracy values, these are them for grades 1 through 3. I think we have 9, and then there's a blank one for when they're not enrolled in 1, 2, or 3. Next slide. Thank you, Melissa. So when we ran and looked at numbers this year, we actually take the early numeracy numbers 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. And you can see, yay, end of year, we got one more. And it was not required this year, but it will be. And then we're improving. And then students with nulls, this is for end of year student counts, and this is individual student counts, 1 through 3. We had about 50, half of them not with a null. So that's where we stand on that. Next slide. And it's Stephanie.
So here are our plans for making the validation fatal errors. We're planning to check on PowerSchool's progress with submitting the early numeracy data before making the validation for S1 for a fatal error. So the validation on the early numeracy intervention field can be made a fatal error at any time because it doesn't start triggering until the last day of school. So when we submit this value for this field, we probably need to pay additional attention. And then the last one is validation S1 record for S144. So there is for grade 1 to 3 must be present at the year end. So basically those are the plans we will make for the validation fatal errors in the next year. So next slides, please. Aaron.
Thank you. Go ahead and move to the next slide. So it's just reviewing all the work that's happened. Again, thank you for the work in fixing and submitting your information for the end of the year. So the accuracy data reviews were completed for every LEA prior to the June data meeting. Make sure to update your UTREx contact information when personnel changes occur. Getting things done early ensures a smoother submission process, as technical problems with the SIS system and UTREx may and do occur, as most of you are familiar. And then the submission deadline is around the same time every year. So plan accordingly with vacations and holidays. So again, just a shout out to everyone and the fantastic work that you do in getting this information. We know it's a busy time of the year. It's a busy time for a year, obviously, on our side as well. So we just appreciate the work that you're doing. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Next year deadlines. It's important that LEAs submit their year-end data on time. We stress that, obviously. Year-end deadline is always July 7th at 5 p.m. unless the dates fall on weekend or holiday. This year, most LEAs finalized on time. However, 2 LEAs received an extension due to submission issues caused by their SIS. And then the 3rd LEA received an extension to refinalize after they found some errors inside of there. With all that said, all the LEAs were finalized by the end of the day on Monday, July 11th, and the ETL and data audits were completed by USB the following week. And the data are available for official use. That doesn't mean that we've produced all the official results yet, but they are now available for official utilization where they are at and have been produced. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay. As a note, there is no official date for when the new school year rolls over in UTREx. The ETL, the data audits, and the USB IT process does take some time, and each school year might vary on what needs to get done before the LEAs can roll over. And this is just a simple case where we had an extension. It took us a couple more days longer, and so we had to delay the rollover. LEAs were not, emailed the notification about rolling over in UTREx in school year 2023 until Friday, July 22nd, and LEAs should not roll over in UTREx before the official email notification from USB. Again, this is often mid to end July that happens. So these are just general notes to be aware of as we're moving on to this next year. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Another reminder, make sure to download all the year-end data reports the day you press that finalize button. The archive reports are not typically available until after July. The LEA should not solely depend upon the archive reports. The link to download finalized reports for the finalized winner does not work. You need to go to the UTREx year-end reports and download all 4 reports. The summary, the school summary, the consolidated membership, transfer student list, and the SCRAM, ESY. USB finance notified us that the independent auditors will not be auditing LEAs in the upcoming year, but you should still save finalized reports for your records. And then just a note in the chat that the 2013 is available now, if anyone was not aware. Thank you, Cliff. Go ahead and move to the next slide. By the way, a question came up, why no audits? It's a great question. I'll address that one real quick. It has to do with, the audits have to do with actually the efficiency and effectiveness of what is happening with our systems, with UTREx, with the courtesy reviews, with your updates. The audits used to be a secondary catch to say, oh, look, we've missed, when I say you, whoever's missed, a component here or there, but it became more redundant and unnecessary because we were already doing all these checks anyway. That's kind of the point of the courtesy review, was to check these things beforehand and not be hit with an audit finding on the back end. And so those audits, if you were familiar with them, were just kind of a replication of what we were doing anyway with the courtesy reviews and the communication back and forth. So it was decided that, hey, the way the audit was written up, it didn't make a lot of sense. So that's why no audits, or the dropping of that requirement for audits, has happened. Hopefully that answers your question, Steve, or Stephen. Okay. Reminder to turn off your daily collection at the end of year. LEA should turn off the daily schedule collection after they finalize in July. Once you're satisfied that your year-end data is final, you should not continue to submit daily collections to UTREx. This is only at the end of year. You leave your automatic collections running in October and December. If you continue to submit after you finalize your year-end data and you did not download your year-end reports the day you finalize, it's possible that your data in UTREx reports has changed, because UTREx is a dump and load system. Moving back to the chat, that's Russ asked, does that include the sample backup documentations for students who have exited a school? That is a different audit. So thank you for asking that question, Russ. That is still in place. That's from the Office of the Inspector General, it's the United States, who is requiring us, as a response to an audit finding, to go out and do spot checking on the backup documentation on students who have exited. So that's still in place. So that, but my team is not official auditors. We're kind of, so it's slightly different. We go around and view those anyway and do a double check to make sure we're in compliance with that audit finding. So hopefully that makes sense. Next question in the chat, are they looking to change the format of the audit or doing them on every other year, or are they gone forever? Thanks for sending that in, Stephen. That's a great question. I don't know. That's I don't know what the plans are. I know there were discussions of reformatting the audit, but with the number of turnovers that we have seen in finance and in other places, I'm not exactly sure what their going forward plan is on the audits. At the moment, we're just going to say they're gone, but forever, that's a hard one to say. So thanks for asking that. I just don't have the answer behind that, just because multiple people are running that and I'm not in every meeting, thankfully. Next slide, please. Okay, findings for the end of year data, new fields. The enrollment validation types, all but one LEA had data reported. We need to make sure that all the LEAs are able to report this field in 2023. We talked about, the validation will be coming on. The early numeracy interventions, 125 LEAs served grades K through 3 in 2022, and we expect all these LEAs to report the early numeracy intervention data. Of the 125 LEAs with K-12, 38 did not report any early numeracy data at the end of year. Again, the chat was sharing information on that too. It was allowed that an Excel spreadsheet could have been sent in, replace it, in replacement for this year. But again, this is just moving forward in the school year 2023. We need to verify that you will have that and that validation is going to be in place. And then the 3 absent fields, some LEAs did submit this data, but due to issues with the SIS system and data quality, we decided not to populate this field in the UTREx for the 2022. We will be collecting it in the 2023. Okay, go ahead and move to the next slide. Zero student records received with the CB exit code in UTREx. So that is the competency-based graduation flag. We've been asking the LEAs who are on the competency-based program, is it just not there yet? Did any LEA submit a CB exit code in school year 2022? That's, again, general question to everyone. Did anyone submit it? Because we didn't see it. Okay, just sharing, we have, for example, at the rural schools, that professional development that was going on down there, there was a lot of discussion about the competency, the personalized PCBL acronym. So again, it's that competency-based program. Again, a lot of discussion. So make sure that you're aware in talking with your counterparts at the district, especially if you know that you're on a PCL grant in one of the 3 different phases. Either planning, obviously, phase, you want to be doing that because they're just talking about it, but there are the 2 implementation phases behind it. So we would expect to see them. And just reading through the notes, Russell said, I'm not sure that our district staffs are up to speed on what code means and when to use it. Are you saying the PCL grant? That's from Stephen. Stephen, what does the PCL stand for? Because I am saying PCBL. I don't know if those are the same things or not. Let's see if he personally constantly be, yes, that's what we're talking about. We use the Q2 code for one student. Should we have used the CB code instead? From Jen Beatty. Again, was it a competency-based program, or was it an early graduate? And thank you, Stephen. I didn't catch the acronym. I should enunciate a little bit better there. Jen, if you want to have a further discussion on that, happy to have that with you to help understand your situation. Feel free to contact myself, Calissa, and David Mackey. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So the RA code. So this code is submitted for students whose cohort was not 2022. Of the 34 students submitted with the RA codes in 2022, 14 are not in the 2022 cohort. So we cannot reassign cohorts for students who've already been included in a 4-year cohort rate. These students can still work, obviously, towards and earn an alternate diploma. Unfortunately, the window is passed for being able to reassign the cohort and have that student included as a graduate with the alternate diploma and adjust their 4-year cohort. And so in these cases, it might, like it says here, it might be best to report these students with an RT instead of an RA. And then there is the information of, use RA for students in grades 11 or 12 who meet the criteria listed in the board rule R277, 419, and 705 for continuing to enroll beyond the student's cohort year and who are on path to receive an alternate diploma. Okay, and Russ, thank you for sharing that out on the RA code, meaning the district's coming up to speed on when to use it and what it means. Okay, next slide. Okay, and the RA code and disability type, RA code should not be submitted for students with an SL or BD disability type. These disability types do not fit the definition of students with significant cognitive disabilities. And thus, we're not expecting to see the RA code for these disability types. Again, it just kind of refresh a reminder, these are for the significant cognitive disability. And you can see the requirements from that link. Students who have had an RA code can only count as a graduate within, graduate with a GA. So that's pretty critical that if you begin to submit the RA, then that graduate will be a GA. If a student is a retained senior and is not eligible for the RA code, please submit the RT. Okay. And if we need, obviously, we have the historical update if we need to change some things. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, David.
Next slide, please. Okay, so Calista and myself, we're working currently to process all of the scripts that need to be run to get the graduation preview report updated. Once all of those are run and we've done our QA of everything, and IT has updated the report on the data gateway, it shows you where to go. So if you log into your account on the data gateway and you go to my tools, select graduation, there'll be a graduation rate preview report there where you can check out all of the different outcomes. Currently it's grayed out. Data and statistics will also be sending out the files that we've done for the past couple of years through Move It, so that you can check those as well. And so the purpose of this report is just to verify that the data is accurate for your schools and your LEA and at the student level. And so we ask that you just make sure that those that in your LEA that need to see these reports, know that they'll be available. Is the question about the graduation preview report, Russ? As of right now, there's not an ETA. We had a few things that we need to clear up first in the script as we've been QAing. And so we'll let you know. Hopefully it'll be fairly soon. Next slide, please. Okay, the UTREx report with adult education for data that's been submitted to UTREx is going to be available soon. I know that the IT team is going to be going to be working on this fairly soon. You should review this report for students who exited your LEA to take the GED. It'll show all students that passed the GED between July 1st of 2021 and July 15th of 2022. The GE code will turn to be into a dropout after October if it doesn't get updated. And just make sure that you code students who pass the GED as a GEG. Next slide. So you can once the report is available and you can look at it and review the data, or even now, if you feel like if there are students that need to be updated, you have until the coming October 1 submission deadline. Updates to the prior year records should be done either through an S1X record update or a historical update. Historical update requests are due 2 weeks prior to the submission period. So in this case, it's September 23rd. Use the S1X record updates to update graduation data for students who are not currently enrolled in your LEA. And these updates may not be reflected in the graduation preview report or the 4-year report on the data gateway because they don't currently point to live data. But if you have questions about updates that have been made, you can reach out to Callista or myself and we can check to make sure that they've been submitted. Next slide. All right, this is just some basic information for you about the graduation rate. There are 5 possible outcomes. It could be a graduate, a dropout, other completer, a continuing student, or you may be excluded. These outcomes are determined by your exit codes that are submitted and the high school completion status. And here's a link to see all of the different federal codes. So the question is, could I receive a refresher on when historical updates are to be used over S1X records? So as stated in the previous slide, an S1X record update is only for students who are not currently enrolled in your LEA. If a student is enrolled in the current year, you would then submit a historical update request for prior year changes. All right, and then this is just another, again, it shows a little bit about how the graduation rate is calculated. It's all graduates divided by everybody in the cohort. So all of the 4 outcomes above minus the excluded students. Next slide. All right, so the cohort graduation rate, again, that just shows how it's calculated. The dropout rate here, and because other completers and continuing students are excluded from the dropout count, they will not add up to 100%. Next slide. These are some things that you'll want to keep an eye on. Exit codes that will, if unchanged, would turn into a dropout. a GP, GE, or AE. If a student is reported as RA but does not return to school, the student will be identified as a dropout in their reassigned cohort year graduation rate the following year after the RA code was submitted. Next slide. These are some codes for your reference that may become a dropout as well. And next slide. All right, so after the October 1 submission is finalized and everything's been run, we will run the final grad rate again, and then we will send out the preview will be available sometime around the end of November. And the final graduation report will then be published and made available publicly in December. Again, if you have any questions on the graduation rate, please contact Calista or myself. Next slide. Okay, back to you, Aaron.
Aaron?
I'm here. I was just
There you go.
responding to Rebecca's text on the historical update versus the S1X. Sorry. Go ahead and move to the next slide. We'll get back to whatever Rebecca says. So go ahead and move to the next slide. Ooh, that's not showing what I thought it'd show. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Sorry. So this has to do with the Provision 1 schools, or sorry, Provision 2, and for the community eligibility, can't speak, the Community Eligibility Program, or CEP schools, or the districts who are designated as that. Basically what it is under that designation of you are able to give free lunch to all the students within either that school or within the district. And for the past, I think it's about 8 years or so, the training that we've been giving everyone who are under the Provision 2 or the CEP program is you may submit 100% of your students as low income into the UTREx submission process. However, what we've run into, and so this is a change, is Utah has had a drastic, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it has a drastic reduction in the Title I funds that were received in the state of Utah. There's multiple reasons behind this. One of them being that Utah is one of the most well-performing or economic states in the nation. And because of that, the federal government has done recalculations, and the allocations based on their formulas means Utah is receiving less. And so as Max Lang and his team in the Title I are doing the distribution of the funds for Title I out, it's short. And so this has brought up questions of, well, how do I get my money in there, or how do I get more money? So just kind of sharing out with the group, well, it's across the board. It's not just you or another district or whatever who's feeling short on this. It is the entire state of Utah. So changes in low income. So this basically is requirement to the CEP and Provision 2 schools. The student level, free, reduced, or qualified for low income needs to be submitted by each student. And so the CEP and the Provision 2 can no longer submit that blanket 100% low income on those students. When I say 100%, it is on every one of the students. You could just put that in there. So that's a change. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay. For your information, how Title I calculations happen. And this goes really to the CEP and to the provision to Title I options. Option number one, and again, this is being communicated out to the Title I directors as well. So they can use your submitted percentage of low-income students that you submit. That's just straightforward. We take the data through UTREx, we upload it into EdFact system, federal government receives it, and that's the percentage. Okay, that works. Another one is the LEA. The site can determine to use only the direct certification counts. So those students who have a direct certification, you can take that and times it by 1.6 to come up with the percentage for your Title I fund allocation. The other one, and this only works in districts, and this because the districts have the borders, is the low income percentage. It can be based upon SIDE, S-I-D-E. I left a link in there. It kind of gives you instructions behind this, but basically what that is the National Center for Educational Science, the Department of Ed has basically a map of the entire United States. They take the boundaries of the LEAs, they overlay it on census data, and then they apply basically the neighborhood income to poverty ratio. It's a number between 0 to 1,000. And they overlay that, and then they look at that percentage. So 130 and below on that index is considered free. And then I believe it's like 180 or 200. I don't remember the exact number. And low would be the reduced lunch. And so that could be applied to a district wide. Now, how do you apply for the different options? I don't have the answer for that one right now. Max Lang and his team is working on those options. It has crept up and is becoming central to a lot of the Title I directors and the LEAs in particular, because there's a reduction of funds, and this is having an impact. For community eligibility designation and such, that is still under the Department of Agriculture and the Child Nutrition program here that sits in the State Board of Education. It's different on how those applications are done and awarded. So if you have questions about that and being eligible, then you would want to talk with Tammy Walker or with Kathleen or I can't think of the different names. So I'm just going to Tammy Walker. I believe it is on with us. Tammy, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
I don't think so. I'm not able to see what you're presenting right now. I was just able to listen to your discussion. I just wanted to make sure that you're making it clear that for each student that is reported, that the LEA will need to report if the student was free or reduced eligible based off of what household applications or direct certification, and not based off of the fact that they are enrolled in a provision or CEP school. Was that
Yep.
covered?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then if they do have questions about CEP or provision 2, their food service director can contact their science specialist or can contact me as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I anticipate when we get our October numbers this year that our low income percentages from the state will be even lower than during the pandemic. I don't know how well you are receiving the applications and that information as you're doing your registration. We'll see. We know it's an issue, but coming out of the pandemic, obviously that the provisions or that free lunch has come to an end. So those applications need to be collected or gathered and submitted. So, all right, there's that component. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, Almost at the end. Thank you for putting up with our meetings. Next slide. So as we talk about next year, we are looking at, so we're scheduled through December. We have no meetings in December, and I have to pull those up. But what we're looking at for next year, January 26th, March 23rd, April the 26th, the 27th, 28th timeframe to do the data conference. May would be the 18th with year-end upload training. Then we have a proposed 22nd for June for a regular meeting, no meeting in July. August, kind of similar, August 10th, a regular meeting, and then September 14th or the 21st would be regular meeting with a training for the October submission, and then October 6th and in November. These are our proposals for next school year. And the question came in as no February meeting. Typically, we do not do a February because of legislative sessions. And then they say, are you looking for a 3-day conference? No, we're looking for one of those days would be the conference. Like we did this last year. And I think this last year was well accepted because it was a hybrid approach. I think most of you liked it. And thank you, Stacy. Yeah, not offended. We used to have those 2-day, almost 3-day conferences. Fortunately, we don't have to do that right now. So if there's any concerns with these times, these calendars, like they're or with these dates, please email myself or Melissa Holt. Let us know that there's a conflict and we can adjust that. But moving forward, that's what we're planning for next year. Okay. Next slide. I think we're done. Okay, Russ. Is that Melissa? Is that the last slide, or Colby, or whoever's driving? I'm going to say yes. Okay, Russ wants to come on and ask some questions. Russ, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. My first question, in trying to understand excused, unexcused absence and absences due to a suspension, we had also in the past talked about whole day and half day absences. In trying to understand this better and reading through the documentation, it appeared that as it is now, those excused, unexcused, and absences due to a suspension are counted, you count a day as one if it's a half day or more that they are unexcused or one of those other categories. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. That will help. That's what it was appearing to me. So are we doing anything with whole and half day absences that needed to be reported anywhere else as separate values?
I'm going to say no. Anyone from my team, anyone from USB have any other additional information before that's a final no? I don't. I want to say it's a no.
Okay.
Okay.
We've started to get a second question. We've got several questions and this year in regards to a student who wants to take a full set of courses in an online program for another school district and then take a couple of elective courses from one of our brick and mortar. Does that mean that we should consider this situation as a possibility, and that in this instance, if the student is marked as an early graduate, that we would be able to claim more than a full WPU? And if so, which or which one of us, or is it both districts that would mark the early graduate status and then report membership as appropriately depending on the number of classes they're taking?
Great question. And by the way, that's why I was called down to the board meeting at the beginning of this meeting, because they were asking very similar questions. The answer is, it is the early warning flag that allows a student to be funded beyond the 180 ADM, right? So that's what needs to be put in place. Who needs to put that in place? The brick and mortar school, who has school of record. I want to say it's yes. It's not no, it's not an and. So it's the school of record, yes, needs to make sure that they are putting in early graduate to make sure that that is happening. That school that has the early graduate and is not the school of record, no. So there's a double negative in there. So basically the school of record equals yes, then generates that additional funds because they're allowed to go up and beyond, because then we look at the other enrollment record that comes in. Now, SOEP and taking those additional classes, the other school district should be obviously submitting the records just as well, so we can go in and take a look at it and say, what courses are they taking and what type of membership would they be generating, but it's school of record, no, in those cases. Now, following back up on that is the board recognizes that they could run out of money real quick. And so Scott Jones, Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, as he's talking to him, says that that is our current mechanism that is happening, because we also know that a private student can tap into that system and submit to seats. When I say, the school taps into seats and gets that reimbursement for a private student. So
Aaron,
go ahead.
Sorry, this is Stephen over at Jordan. You're saying something that I'm not sure if it's, and Russ can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering if they're in a different situation. I'm at least thinking of a different situation where the online classes are not through the SOEP program. It's just like in our case, Jordan District has an online school that is not currently part of this SOEP program, but if a student who was attending NEBO full-time and wanted to take some additional classes from our online school, not through the SOEP program, and was targeting early graduation and had the early graduation flag, what would happen in that case?
Okay, great question.
Steve is correct in terms of the question that I'm asking.
Yes.
That is the one that I'm asking.
Yes. Right now, just letting you know, right now, we don't go in and distinguish the difference. Seats, the program Seats itself attempts to. And so Seats is a different, just so you know, Seats is a different program right now that's independent of the data submission. And so in these cases where it is not an SOEP program, but they're taking on, let's say, hypothetically, students in Jordan, and they're taking some online classes from NEBO. You still submit it that way, and currently the funding then allows for Jordan, who is the school of record, then to claim for the addition, and then for NEBO then to say, hey, we're contracted with you, whatever the payment is that way. So it's kind of, it works. However, this was, again, sharing, this was brought up just an hour ago in the board meeting, and there's a recognition that, oh, wait a minute. It should be available for any district to have these, when I say it should, the comments in the board meeting were, it should be available. No action was taken on that, but request that there's additional evaluation and study of what is going on. So I'm just letting you know how it currently works is it works if it's SOAP or not. You mark early graduate, it allows you to increase that 180.
So then in that case, where it's not SOEP, the two LEAs would have to come to an arrangement, and in some case, the brick and mortar LEA has to pay the
Correct.
virtual LEA.
Correct.
Okay.
There is going to be some evaluation and saying, hey, this is what's going on. And make sure that we're in agreement, because at a certain point, we're going to start running out of money, if you will. Because students taking out more than what a full WP is worth, obviously we're going to run into issues. And the SOAP program is already running up against budget limitations. So just know that it is a discussion. We don't have an answer, but I'll just let you know the way it works right now is like I just explained it to you. And there's not current restriction on SOAP, non-SOAP. Does that help?
Yes, somewhat. We'll anxiously await for the further discussion and answers to come as those are available. We'll see if we can't work that out going forward and figure out how best to proceed for right now.
Okay.
The last question that I had is something that may be for the future, and partly because I'm not exactly sure the direction of where everything is going to go or end up, but just an observation that, because I'm not completely sure where standards-based grading and competency-based credit are going to go in the future, but in the UTREx specification where it indicates how we report academic grades, currently right now it has that we report a numeric value for everything other than an F, a P, or an NG. And my thought was, in the future, is it possible that a school could report, for example, a 2.0, which means partial mastery as opposed to a C? And it would pass all of the edit criteria, but to do any kind of data averaging or statistical calculations on that type of data would largely be kind of an invalid value,
Right.
if you will. And so just a thought for the future that perhaps we might need to take a look at that as that definition of how we report academic grades as we're going through the USIMS process.
Yes, and I think the answer on that too is, as we're going through the USIMS process, really looking at and validating their, yes, we're aware of that. So thank you. John Parsons says, if you don't put in the location of not the school record, do you receive any funding? Because I thought if you were not the school of record, then you don't receive any WP funding. That is correct, John. If you mark not school of record, then it doesn't generate funding. So it's the brick and mortar school that says the kids are taking these extra classes. And as Malia put in there really should be an early graduation plan. When I say there really should be, there should be an early graduate plan in order to be allowed to have that flag marked. Again, this is a counselor component. The SOAP people train on this. The counselor should be being trained on that. Just sharing out that information within the chat. Okay.
So Aaron, this is John.
Okay.
So in the non-SOEP instances where a brick and mortar student is taking full time there and taking a few classes from an online, and the brick and mortar school has them as early grad.
Mm-hmm.
Early grad flag is in their SEOP. does the online school have to also have an SEOP for that student with the early grad in order to get any of that funding? We're talking non-SO.
Right. Non,
OEP.
yes. Okay, I'm just thinking through the business rules. Malia, I don't think it's required in the non-SOEP online program.
So then we
Right.
would claim 100% WPU and the online would claim whatever it is that they did, and that would go through and be okay.
You would claim the 100 and it allows for the addition on that student. So you,
So the brick and mortar school would claim 100%. The online would claim whatever percent of however many classes the student was taking with them. And that would go through okay because I sent in the early grad flag.
now in these cases, you should also be submitting, you know, the student is taking these online classes off campus, right?
Well, they could be taking them from a room in the school. More than likely, yes, they'd be taking them from.
Right. And so then in this scenario, then it would be district to district negotiation saying, hey, or what, however that's, you know, worked out between you two, saying I submitted the kid, you being the brick and mortar school, submit the early graduate, here's their full enrollment records, if you will. And then that gets, then you work out the exchange of how much that was between the two of you.
So Aaron,
Go ahead.
so then the brick and mortar would not submit 100%, they'd submit 125%, say.
Correct.
And in their schedule, they would include, even though they're not a SOEP seats class, they would include those classes that the student is taking at the other school, similar to if it was an SOEP course.
Correct. And Malia, I believe
Wow, that really messes things up. There's the fact is the student is taking online classes out there that the school, the brick and mortar school, probably doesn't even know anything about them. So how do they even, how do
well,
they justify any of that stuff? I don't understand that.
and this is where we are evaluating how well this is working. And that's the important thing. So what we do see is, for example, so we see the enrollments in the two different places, but again, as one comes through, but it's school record, no, that then kicks that out from the calculation of receiving, you know, the WPU. So
Aaron?
But why would the online school submit it as not a student of record when they're supplying some of the students, you know, some of that students'
right. So in cases like, okay, so thank you. I'm just thinking through this. In cases like that, so if you have two places and they're both submitting, let me get the wording on this. Not, you're submitting school of record from both places and you have early graduate flag, then those two then will allow for an additional amount. So the proration of forcing it down to 180 is not applied.
That would be how I would expect it to work.
Right. What we'll do for our next meeting is we'll prepare a slide or a couple of slides kind of going through this process. Let me go in and review it. I have to, looks like I have to do this for the board anyway. So we'll prepare in our next meeting more detail, just reviewing this one. So it is complicated. We'll take a look
Yeah,
at
on
it.
those seats classes, I understand where
It will be for both.
not claim them and we'd claim 125% if it was more than the regular. I get that. That part I
Yeah.
understand, but when they're not a seat class, that's the part I think the other school should be shipping their data in, and we should be shipping our data in.
Right,
Whatever that is, they figure that out.
right.
So
So,
unless someone made changes to the membership proration without me knowing about it, the way it works is exactly what you two said, John and Stephen, that each LEA submits their membership that they are providing for the student, and then the membership proration process on our end sees that the student has the early grad flag mark and says, okay, this student doesn't get included in proration calculations.
so both places get funded.
Yeah. At what they reported, because neither of them get prorated.
Yeah, because of the graduation flag. Or grad flag.
Right. And as I understand it, the way it's working, again, my disclaimer, unless someone has made a change unbeknownst to me, it doesn't have to be marked in all the LEAs. It just has to be marked on any record that the student has. And then that student will just get exempt from proration calculations. Although it wouldn't hurt if every LEA just marks the early grad flag. If the student is on an early grad flag, you know, that's the most accurate information to have in their record for each LEA, not just one of them.
Yeah, it's a max field check, meaning if ever it's marked, then we mark it.
Yeah, but again, if the other school had to mark the early grad flag, they would have to have the SEOP piece of it done so that they could validate that the student was trying to graduate early.
That is correct.
More than likely, the only one that would have that would be the brick and mortar school.
Again, and then that's typically what we see in there, because brick and mortar is dealing, you know, the counselors are sitting down with the student working through that process.
Aaron, I do have one that is exactly the reverse, in that it's the online school, which has 100% enrollment, and they then want to take a couple of classes from our brick and mortar school. So there are some instances going both ways, but
Yeah. So if the student's 100% online, again, they should be submitting as if it doesn't matter if you're 100% online or 100% in brick and mortar or any hybrid combination. You know, they should be submitting, and then you would be submitting that portion that you guys are providing for that student.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Russ, that's usually the bars are actually that. They're taking from online classes, and they want to take some from our school, and they don't have an SEOP at our school. So we're relying on the online to make sure that they're sending in a early grad thing so that we can have more than those 180 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then all those warnings that are over those 180 days, we can just ignore them.
Up to,
Which we do anyway.
yes. Yes. Great discussion. It's complicated because there's lots of different variations and nuances to, well, what is going on? Is this a contract? Is this a seats or a state online education program? Is this an early graduation program? Not including, it's complicated with lots of nuances there. So next board meeting, or not, sorry, next LEA data meeting, we'll have a little presentation on that to help out. Okay. Any other questions from the the group? Feel free to just come off your mic and ask. If not, thank you for joining us. Again, we appreciate all the work that went into the end of your data submission. Have fun getting ready for school.
Yeah, sorry, Erin, I could not find my unmute button because I had it in full screen mode when you were talking to me. I'm like, yeah, it's around here somewhere.
No problem. Thank you.
And I was texting Lindsay.
I am going to stop the recording.
Okay.
Are you sure you want to stop recording to the cloud?